Today we will discuss about validation and safety during development of medical devices. And to discuss on the issue, we have Mr. Venkat Bhagavati, popularly is known as Venkat. He is currently serving as advisor medical devices and IVD at ICAT Manesar, which is a government owned company facility for testing and validation. And he gives inputs regarding regulatory approvals for electromedical devices testing as per ISO and IEC standards. He has done his master's degree in science and bioengineering from Tampere University, Finland. So over to Mr. Venkat.
So thank you very much for the kind introduction. So very good evening all of you. It's great that we get a chance sometimes to present on related to medical devices in front of actual practicing physicians or future physicians. So first of all, today's topic, when sir told it was about medical devices validation regulatory affairs, I told him that I am technically qualified to speak only on electromedical devices. So medical devices essentially fall under, it's a very wide field, but basically fall under two categories. The first one is any device which uses electricity, like all our X-ray, CT scan, whatever, ventilators, oxygen concentrators, and so on. Second one are those which do not use electricity, which are called non-active medical devices. Such as you have got different implants or even your simple catheters or needles or whatever. So since my area of expertise is biomedical engineering, it is related mainly to the electromedical device category. So from for the non-active medical devices, someone from maybe polymer or material science or biomaterial be an ideal person to speak. So this is it. And our institute is, I'm serving currently as advisor at International Center for Automotive Technology, Manesar. So this is a lab under Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public.
दिक्कत नहीं होगा आपको निकालने में? नहीं वो अभी पिकनिक आज करेंगे ना, इस हाथ से कर देना, तो जिस पे पहनना ही पड़ेगा।
So
हमको पेशेंट को करने से इरिटेट होता है ग्लव्स।
So this is a lab under Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises, and a part of the National Automotive Testing and R&D project, NATRIC. And we are located at Manesar near Gurgaon on the Jaipur Highway Road, that area from Gurgaon to Jaipur. So first of all, just from a technical view, most of you would be wondering why we are doing medical device testing in an automotive lab. So I just want to make it clear. So most of our electromedical devices, if you look at their validation and testing, or even the kind of engineering which goes into it, is essentially the sum of, or rather, a medical device equals to an automobile plus pharmaceutical plus software. So these three are the kind of science which goes into making a medical device. So we deal with mostly engineering tests, hardware tests, which are carried out on medical devices. So which will be done in an automotive lab. And we are also accredited by NABL to test different kinds of electromedical devices. And NABL is our National Accreditation Board for Laboratories in India. So we give the NABL accredited reports for the same, for the relevant IEC or ISO standard. And there are other labs which test the software part, and there are other labs which are into toxicology. So we are not into those areas. So we are mainly into the engineering hardware tests. So this is a brief summary about ICAT. ICAT is, it essentially provides services for testing, validation, design, and homologation for automotive and also non-automotive sectors increasingly. And during COVID time, we have tested a lot of respiratory and equipment also, and specifically carried out their validations also. So in this slide, I have tried to capture essentially their medical device testing. So they, as I told earlier, they fall under three different baskets. So the first ones are the engineering tests, which includes both the hardware and the software. So this is what we essentially do.
The slide is not
second
moving, sir.
Now, okay. Are you able to see now?
I'm seeing one single slide, sir, which is the introductory one, which says electromedical device validation. Not ahead of.
Okay. Then I will. Okay. Then I will try to. What should I do then? Maybe I'll try to share again. That will be better, right? Okay. I'll just
that
stop.
will be better. That will be better.
Okay. So now you are able to see the slide.
Sir, only the first slide is
First slide only.
As I told, we fall under Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises. So I think resound is coming. So maybe some of you can just, if they are in speaker somewhere, that can be.
Yeah, please unmute. Yes.
Are you able to hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So in this slide, I have tried to capture the entire MedTech testing process. So they fall under three categories. The first one are the engineering tests. Second ones are the biocompatibility tests. So biocompatibility means essentially something has to be compatible with our body. So you have got tests such as cytotoxicity, sensitization, irritation, and so on. And along with that, you have got animal testing. The third category of tests are the clinical trials. They are the most expensive and they take the most, like the longest amount of time. And internationally, the protocol is according to ISO 14155 standard for medical devices. And this standard is modified by the national regulator of different countries. And there are slight deviations from the main standard. Then in medical device testing and validation, there are essentially two types. The first ones are the conformity assessment testing, which is what we are talking. The second category is the calibration of the devices. So let's say one has a ventilator. So then one needs a gas flow analyzer as well as a variable resistance test lung to calibrate it. Because let us say your lung or my lung, what is the key mechanical difference is that they will have different mechanical compliances as well as the mechanical resistances. So that is a key difference. So these resistance and compliance values will change for different conditions such as ARDS or COPD or let's say if the lung is of an infant or a female or male, so on, or a sports person, so on. So what I have done here in this slide is I have encapsulated about 14 kinds of different tests which are used for medical devices in general. So the first one is electrical safety on the top left. So as you can see, most of the devices which uses electricity or which are based like active medical devices, there are about 500 to 600 active medical devices as per US FDA list. And these for them, this electrical safety is very critical, specifically because for a patient, already his health is kind of compromised. And therefore, the limits for leakage currents or dielectric strength, these are all very critical. Otherwise, it may cause harm to the patient. And specifically, let us say if a device fails, then it's called a single fault condition. Then what happens is very critical. The second category of tests is the electromagnetic compatibility or EMC testing. This is again very critical in all electromedical devices. So what is EMC? As we know, our entire environment, we live in an electromagnetic environment. Let us say if a patient has a pacemaker and he goes next to a transformer or some sort of a high tension line, it may affect the performance of the device. So this is called electromagnetic compatibility immunity testing. This is again very much needed in the operation theater or in the where, specifically the electrosurgery generator or surgical lasers. They generate a lot of unwanted electromagnetic noise, which affects the performance of the equipment nearby. So we have to check for interference from ESU generators or surgical lasers and so on. And this again, the next category is alarms or acoustic test. So this is again very crucial for all ICU instrumentation and also let's say some instrumentation, let's say oxygen concentrators or wherever we have got alarms. Because as maybe some of you will be pulmonologists or anesthesiologists, you recognize the different alarms of a ventilator, for example. So these high priority alarms and low priority alarms and medium priority. So specifically their pulse, their melody, and their burst and pitch, all these parameters are very stringently defined. And for the alarms, the standard is IEC 60601-1-8. This is the standard for medical alarms, and all electromedical devices have to meet this standard. And another thing is certain large medical devices, they also generate a lot of noise or acoustic energy, and this acoustic energy requirements are also quite stringent for ICU instrumentation or large item, large equipment such as CT scan or MRI specifically. So MRI specifically generates a lot of noise, and there is a specific standard known as NEMA MS4, and that entire process of reducing the noise of an MRI is a entire different field of engineering in itself. And next are performance tests. So here again, one needs to note that every device has some kind of performance metrics and a unique standard for checking its performance, and a certain setup or a test needs to be created. So for example, again, since I am just quoting about ventilator, so if you look at ventilators, there are about 5 or 6 or 7 types of ventilators from regulatory point of view. So for critical care ventilator, the requirements are the are the most stringent, and the standard is ISO 80601-2-12. So the next level of ventilator is basically the ventilator in the anesthesia machine or the anesthesia workstation, which is -2-13 standard. The next category would be something like transport ventilator, which is again -2-84. The next, the further the below in the chain would be something like a device used for ventilatory insufficiency or ventilatory impairment, which a typical layperson can also use, or something like a non-invasive automated ambu bag or so on and so forth. And the next below that would be the BiPAP machine or the CPAP machine. So on. So this critical care ventilator performance tests are kind of the superset. And from then onwards, you keep on these the limits become less and less stringent as we go below. So hopefully I am clear, right? You are all like any doubts till now? Okay, we'll move ahead. So the next category of test is the environmental test. So in environmental testing, the device is put under a lot of stress conditions. Let's say humidity, temperature, torque, vibration, so on. Let's say if a device is to be used in an ambulance, so it has to undergo certain vibration tests which will simulate the conditions in an ambulance. So the enclosure has to be a bit rigid and so on. The next category is software. So as you know, most of the devices, every device has some sort of software nowadays. Here again, the crucial aspect to consider is that there should be no harm to the patient uh, if due to software failures. So the softwares are divided into different risk classes such as A, B, C, and so on and so forth, and then they are evaluated. And the procedure is similar to the regular software testing and validation, such as every software needs to undergo unit level testing, system level testing, integration level testing, and so on. But this process is customized for medical device environment. Yes. And next, we have certain optics tests if the device has some optical components. Okay. Ah, yes. Yes. So the next category is the CAE validation, which is computer-aided engineering validation. So before doing all the tests physically, most of the tests nowadays are also, most of the models are validated in simulation also. So again, next I have mentioned something called ISO 13485, which is the quality management standard for the medical device. And all these tests fall within this framework. And the next comes risk management. The standard for risk management is ISO 14971. What is risk? Risk essentially is defined as severity of harm multiplied by probability of harm. So the same concept is used in health technology assessments also. Next, we move on to packaging. So for every device, the packaging is also very critical. And specifically the kind of packaging design, and the environment in which it is stored and transported. Specifically, if the device has to be transported or kept in a sterile environment. The next comes usability engineering. This is a new concept, or rather, not so old, rather, maybe a few 10 to 15 years old concept. So the standard is IEC 62336. So usability means essentially the device will be used by either the surgeons or the physicians or the paramedical staff and so on, and the nurses. So you essentially make it more user friendly and try to avoid harm to the patient, rather unintended harm to the patient. And that is why a lot of clinical trials and usability studies are clubbed together. So this is one area where Indian manufacturers traditionally ignore during the design process. And in the later stages, it becomes a very big issue, specifically if the device has to be exported. Then compatibility I have already covered, and this recurrent test after repair I have covered. So these are the 14 major areas I have listed. So if someone takes these into account, if he or she is designing a device, that will go well. That's then any doubts till now? Any questions? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Are you also getting the resound, sir, or even I am hearing it? Only
No,
I am
it's
hearing
clear.
it.
It's clear. It's
Clear,
clear.
na? So no doubt. Okay, I can move ahead. Then as I had mentioned about electromagnetic testing earlier, so here we have tested on the top left, we were testing a CT scan machine, and for the privacy reasons, I have covered it up. So this kind of test, they take place in something known as a anechoic chamber. So anechoic means there are no RF echoes or radio frequency echoes. So to say in a common language, if you will not be able to find any mobile signals inside the chamber. So the concept is, once you are absorbing all the EM waves, you are able to clearly measure the output which is coming from the device. So there are very stringent limits for radiated emission as well as radiated immunity. So in radiated emissions, we look at the kind of emissions which are coming out of the device, as it is mentioned. In radiated immunity, the device is kept in an electric field, let us say about 10 volts per meter, and between a certain frequency range, and we look for any kind of failure in performance, in essential performance. So things like suddenly the display is going off, or let us say certain values will oscillate, all these will be observed. So since some of you will be anesthesiologists and sir is an anesthesiologist, I will just point out one thing which I noticed while testing ventilators or respiratory care devices. So in ventilators, you have got this certain things called this PEEP, positive end expiratory pressure. So I have observed that during these immunity tests, the PEEP starts to oscillate. So let us say, and that could be quite harmful for the patient, I guess. And once, like we were doing a test known as power frequency magnetic field, PFMF. So usually that oscillations of some kind of oscillations of power frequency were showing in that PEEP also. So that kind, I think it will be harmful for the patient and so on. And in the bottom right, we have a ventilator which is being tested. And in COVID, we have tested a lot of oxygen concentrators and a lot of transport ventilators specifically. So these are the about some 10 to 11 tests which come under the category of electromagnetic compatibility. The critical ones are, as I said, radiated emissions, radiated immunity, ESD, electrostatic discharge, and so on. So now, first of all, as a physician, why should you know about these things? So the thing is, there are a lot of companies these days which sell a lot of products, maybe substandard or whatever. So they all say they have the CE marking or FDA approval and so on, but you never know what exactly is there. So I will tell you one thing. If you look at the user manual of any device or any ventilator or any X-ray, they have to mention all the tests which are. So let us say for EMC, next time if you see where you have these electromagnetic compatibility tests been carried out or not, you can see that. And they will usually give the complete list of warnings and all the kinds of tests what they have done in the manual itself. So as physicians, if you are able to know, okay, this is the test which happens, then I think you can, spot out a lot of spurious kind of devices in the market. I think that will be very useful if seen people in the medical fraternity know about these tests. Then this safety test. This is as per IEC 60601-1, and you have got electrical, mechanical, and thermal safety. So on the top left, one device we are testing it leakage current. Current essentially like, tested with the limits have to be very stringent. And on the top right, we sort of flame testing is going on. So basically, you take a small sample and try to see whether it is flammable or not. And on the bottom left, got something known as a vibrator. So as I told, if any device has to be used in an ambulance, you have to test it for vibration. Specifically, a transport ventilator is there, and then it has to undergo this test. And the standard specifies the kind of deviations which are allowed for each mode. So let us say some PCCMB or VCCMB mode is there. Then what kinds of deviations are allowed in, let us say, volume or pressure or oscillations in PEEP or so on. And that's all. So again, this is one ventilator, which is being tested for the alarms and acoustics sound power test. So just like in electromagnetic compatibility, you have got RF anechoic chamber. Here in the field of acoustics, we call it as hemi-anechoic chamber. This is also an anechoic chamber. So that walls consist of the absorbers. Here there are no wedges. And in EMC, there are no absorbers. And the flow is like field, perfectly reflecting surface. And so, what is the key challenge? The key challenge is in India till now, there is no stringent regulations. There is no kind of stringent regulations specifically relating to the engineering validation of a device. So you have got protocol for clinical trials and so on, but this engineering validation or this electrical safety, or things like basic electrical safety, flammability, so on and so forth are not yet regulations. And there are a lot of devices which are kind of refurbished, you know. So a lot of the medical device be rather manufactured by a top MNC company, but most of them will be refurbished, particularly in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So, and they have not undergone any sort of validation or certification. So this causes a lot of problems. Slowly, I think it is being addressed. So for Indian manufacturers, for they have to depend upon European certifications such as CEA and so on. The key problem is these international regulations are currently changing. There is this new EU medical device rules, new EU MDR, which is almost, I think, will come into force very soon. And once that happens, all our local manufacturers, they will face a lot of problems because their devices, they are not yet, whether I don't want to speak for everybody, but most of them, they are not able to produce USPA compliant products. So therefore, most of manufacturers in developing countries, they depend upon this European C as a sort of common currency. C mark is recognized in Africa or South America and India and Southeast Asia and so on. So the solution is maybe some institutes which are, national renowned institute have to write to our drug regulator or CDSCO. And so our medical devices again falls under multiple agencies. There are about 5 agencies in India. So the electromagnetic spectrum falls under Ministry of Electronics, MET. The national regulator is CDSCO, which is the drug control that the person that office. Anything which deals with sound will fall under PCB, Central Pollution Control Board, to some extent. And hello.
Hello.
Are you able to hear, sir?
Yeah.
That resound, that is why I was thinking. Until now I was hearing that. So this drug regulator is CDSCO, and similarly we have got BIS, which is Bureau of Indian Standards, which makes the Indian equivalent standard for the IEC and ISO standards, and so on. AERB regulates, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board regulates the devices which produce ionizing radiation. We yet do not have any body which kind of regulates non-ionizing radiation, let it be ultrasound or laser or MRI. So again, the second challenge is that it has a particular standard, and the test beds to test and validate these are quite extensive. So I have given the examples from diagnostic radiology. So from regulatory point of view, there are about 9 diagnostic radiology devices. On the bottom right, we have got humble dental X-ray. which is the most simple X-ray, and on the top you've got the CT scan and the cath lab and C-arm and mammography and BMD. So here
Slide
again,
is not moving. It's on 7th only.
okay, so again you are not able to see. Sorry. Okay. So now something is changing? No.
No.
Okay.
It's 7th slide only.
7th slide, huh? So 7th
Yeah.
slide long back, I think.
Yeah.
Ah,
Didn't change
okay.
after that.
So okay. So next time it happens. So what should I do? Should I share again?
I think so.
Okay. Something happened today. I don't know why. Usually, sir, I notice sometimes that this Cisco and all, they are all very great, but our Zoom is much better than this, I think.
Yeah.
Now you are able to. Now you should be able to see the screen, sir. I am just. Are you able to see this?
Yes.
Has something changed?
Yes, it has changed.
Okay. I'll just briefly. Yeah. Then. Okay. So. Yes.
See whether slide is changing or not.
Is it changing, sir? Slide?
No. It's not changing.
Okay. It's again stuck on the 7th slide.
It's on 7th
Okay.
slide.
Now
Yes.
is it changing?
No, it's not.
Okay. This is So are you able to see now? No.
No, same slide is there.
Okay. What does it say? The slide?
It's the same.
Focus areas in MedTech testing, right?
Risk management and biocompatibility. CAE validation.
Slide.
Okay.
Okay. No. 7th slide. Okay. I'll shut down. 1 second.